Can the U.S. government confiscate your gold like they did in 1933? Hey, I'm the Stacking Stormtrooper. If you're new to the channel, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a guy in a bucket talking about precious metals. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, get the bell notification clicked, and that way you get updated with any new content. So with the increasing price of gold and silver lately, people are starting to get a little bit worried that there could be a possibility that their gold can be confiscated like we saw back in 1933. Let's take a look at this interview done by Kitco that was just published on August 7th, talking about this very important issue. So before I start playing this interview and giving you my thoughts and comments on it, this interview done by Kitco with E.B. Tucker. E.B. Tucker is with the Metalla Royalty and Streaming Limited company. Basically what this company does is they have different contracts with mining companies, and here streaming process Metalla, they pay the initial payment to the mining company, then they also do a per ounce payment to the mining company, and the mining company then delivers it to Metalla. So they're not exactly a mining company, they're a company that is procuring their metals from mining companies. And then the royalty process is where they just make the initial payment to the mining company, and then when the mining company makes their revenue, some of those revenues then goes to Metalla, almost like they're investing in the mining company. So that is what they do. And real quick too, just to give you a little bit of background, those of you that are new to stacking or don't know about the 1933 Act. Yes, here it says the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, but in 1933, President Roosevelt, he issued an executive order right here known as Executive Order 6102, forbidding the hoarding of gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates within the continental United States. The order required all persons, businesses, and banks to deliver their gold and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve in exchange for $20.67, and this made the trade and possession of gold of more than $100 a criminal offense. So you were basically only able to hold on to 5 ounces of gold. Anything above that, it was considered to be illegal. And the purpose of this was by and large due to the fact that we were in the depths of the Great Depression, and Roosevelt and some of the other top economists of the country believed that the hoarding of gold was basically stalling the financial growth of the United States. So you didn't have people going, G-men going door to door, pounding on the doors, kicking them down and taking the gold physically out of the people's hands. It was basically just telling everybody, look, you will get paid for the gold. You got to turn it in. You can hang on to 5 ounces, no more than that. Otherwise, it is illegal. Did everybody stick to this law? No. Obviously, they didn't. Otherwise, we would have far less pre-33 gold in circulation right now or for purchase. But nonetheless, there were many people that did turn in their gold because they didn't want to, be basically breaking the law. And some may have been viewed as being not patriotic by keeping onto the gold. So anyhow, why don't we just start playing this interview, and I will pause it from time to time just to kind of give you my thoughts on this. But basically, E.B. Tucker is saying that the gold confiscation can happen again. I'm curious as to what all of you who are watching this right now believe. And I will tell you what I think as we are playing this through and once we're done. But let's just take a look here.
Let's go back to gold for a second here. We saw a record inflow of retail activity in the last few months in the wake of the pandemic. Everyone's rushing to gold for safety. Now, I read this.
We've all been seeing that. Those of you that are in the stacking community, we all have been seeing what is happening to silver and gold. Right now, you go onto various websites and you're seeing a lot of the gold is alert me. A lot of the fractional gold is sold out. We saw this at the beginning of the pandemic back in March when things started closing down, March and April. But now we are starting to see that happen again.
Fascinating chapter in your book. Tell the audience the story about your grandfather and gold confiscation back in the 30s.
So I already watched this interview and I thought it was interesting. So here he is going to tell you a little bit about the gold confiscation in 33.
Well, his mother called 4 children into the living room of their house, and she sat them down and opened up a cigar box filled with gold coins from the 19th century, and she told all the kids they could pick one coin. Roosevelt had declared gold illegal for private ownership, but you could have up to 5 ounces. She had 4 kids and herself and her husband, so they kept a few ounces, and the kids got to pick one out. My grandfather told me in vivid detail what this was like. I mean, he was a teenager at that time.
Okay, so his grandfather remembered the Gold Confiscation Act. So that's kind of cool that there is some, firsthand accounts of what it was like when that happened.
And and then she took the gold down and exchanged it for the federally mandated price of roughly $21 an ounce. And then quickly thereafter, Roosevelt raised the price to 35. So that was a big devaluation. Now, I always...
$21 an ounce, guys. I mean, my. Have things changed or what?
Was upset with my grandfather. He's passed now. I said, well, why did she sell out like that? Why would she do that? And he told me, he said, listen, you got to understand something. Every single newspaper had editorials about how gold was they were demonizing gold. And so if you were to have kept all this gold, you would have thought surely you're a traitor. You're against the U.S.
So now, I mean, many people within the stacking community definitely have their, I would say, reservations with trusting mainstream media. I tend to keep my political views and my thoughts about all of that out of YouTube and off the channel. But you could basically tell, based on what he is saying, that there was a strong media campaign to kind of basically demonize gold and to make it seem like gold was basically a bad thing to have if you were hanging on to it. So again, this was like a voluntary thing by and large, almost like a gun buyback program that you see nowadays.
So there was quite a big media campaign against gold at the time, and everyone turned in the gold. The government needed the gold, and the U.S. had the dominant gold position in the world, and they maintained that until really the early 70s, late 60s, when things kind of fell apart, and we walk people through that in the book. Now, how does that relate to today? Well, you were saying everyone's rushing to gold. It feels that way because...
So again, it does feel that way. I mean, we are seeing it. Many of us, and I've spoken to many stackers within the community, have gone into coin shops and, have seen people in there for the first time just buying silver and gold. They're just starting to kind of catch on to precious metals and the precious metals market because they are seeing this big wave of media coverage saying how silver and gold is skyrocketing and they should own it now. So now we're starting to see the effects of that. People kind of brand new to stacking. You look at many people within stacking community, look at the comments and everything. A lot of people saying new to stacking, new stacker here. So you are starting to see those effects where people are starting to get a little bit panicked and spooked with the economy, and they are starting to flood the coin shops and online bullion dealers and what have you to buy precious metals.
Because you work at Kitco and I'm in the royalty business, with Metallo on the board of Metallo. So it looks like everyone's rushing to gold. But believe me, David, they're not. I mean, go to a dinner party with average people, your contemporaries, and ask how many people own gold. Almost no one. And
I would actually agree with him 100% here. Many of us in the stacking community who are passionate about silver and gold, I bet you anything, the overwhelming majority of us have tons of friends and family who we have spoken to and tried to preach to them about the importance of silver and gold. And many of them basically are either not interested or they think we're a bunch of coin nerds or whatever the case may be. But a lot of them don't see the value in silver and gold, or they may say, oh, yeah, maybe one day I'll buy some. But he's absolutely right. And I've spoken to many of my colleagues and what have you and tried to educate them to some degree as to why they should own silver and gold. And, I do agree with E.B. Tucker right now.
And they'll say, well, I've watched the price recently, or I saw something on TV about gold, but I'm just not sure about it, right? So actually, not very many people own gold. And if you look at, in the book we did, what if 2% of all the world's investment assets went into gold? There's literally not enough gold on the planet to provide that much gold to people, 2%. So the percentage of assets the average person has in gold is microscopic. And so just the tiniest bit of demand has kicked off this rally right now. you won't believe what real demand would do. And we're still a long way from that. This is early innings.
So that is interesting. He's saying that the demand is going to skyrocket. We have seen reports recently. Again, I believe Bank of America had put out a article back in April saying that they're predicting gold is going to hit $3,000 an ounce. Other analysts are saying as much as $5,000 an ounce, and not by the end of this year, but they are speculating and saying that the gold prices will definitely skyrocket to those levels. Is it possible? I mean, I guess anything is possible by and large. Do I think that that is going to happen? No, but kind of going along with what he is saying right here, will gold continue to rise and will the demand increase? Yes, I definitely believe so, especially as we get closer to the November election. I do believe, and we also have to see kind of what's going to happen with COVID and what have you, but there will be an increase in demand. And now that you have all these new people flooding the precious metals market and they're starting to kind of get involved, the demand is going to continue to increase just because of the number of people fleeing and getting into precious metals.
Okay, just going back to the story, because why would you buy gold if offline you were telling me that the government can still have the authority to confiscate your holdings? I'm going to show the viewers this newspaper clipping that you included in your book. How likely is it that what happened to your grandfather could happen today?
Highly likely. In fact, more likely. Now, the methods and the means. Okay,
Now, I'm just going to say right now, I do not agree whatsoever. He is saying, now here's the interesting part, and this is where everything kind of starts to take a turn. He is saying that he believes the government can issue an executive order again, and certainly they can, but they can issue an executive order confiscating the silver and gold held by United States citizens. I do not think that that is going to happen. Many people who I've spoken to within the stacking community do not believe that is likely. It's almost like they are going to try to take your Second Amendment rights for owning firearms. I do not see this happening, and this is where I start kind of feeling like E.B. Tucker's agenda being, that he is from a royalties and streaming company. This is where I start thinking that, okay, now he's selling, and Kitco too, right? I mean, that is part of their job is selling the silver and gold, right? This is where they are going to start kind of pumping the fear that it is time to start owning silver and gold, in particular gold in this case.
The methods and the means change over time, but the general principle does not change. Now, I do think it's likely that gold runs into the same problem it did in the 30s, but it's going to look different. Now, today, for instance, you could have a campaign against gold, but at a much higher price. See, right now, not enough people own it. So gold confiscation doesn't come into play until it's a much higher price. Now,
I mean, that I kind of guess it makes sense if the gold price increases to a certain level. The United States government then would maybe do something, perhaps. I guess that's what he's kind of basically saying here. Once the price gets to be a certain amount, then the government is going to maybe step in and try to confiscate gold.
Back in the 30s, while the gold price was fixed, the actual value of gold was much higher. So people that were connected and had advance notice of this, a lot of them moved their gold overseas where it traded in the free market, and it had already broken well above the fixed U.S. price. Now, nowadays, gold trades freely. You can go.
Big surprise there, right? The haves and have-nots back in the day, right? The people that got wind and knew that this was going to happen, they ended up sending their gold overseas. That way they can continue to make their money trading the gold on a free marketplace, whereas here in the United States, it was locked down and you could not own it.
Go to Kitco.com and you can buy ounces of gold, pay a premium for them. They get delivered. You can buy that right now. Okay, so the supply is very tight. The price is rising. That's going to keep rising. Price gets high enough, there's a demonization campaign again. Confiscation is going to look different. It's not going to be newspaper articles and editorials urging people to turn the gold in, don't be a trader. This time it would be with some sort of legislation and likely an excise tax. So remember when AIG.
So this is interesting. What he's saying is that if you are going to own gold, that there's possibly going to be laws passed making it almost virtually impossible for you to sell it. And here's how that is going to look.
Bonuses were the target of everyone's rage in 2008. And the government said, okay, you can keep those bonuses, but you're going to be assessed a 90% or more tax on that bonus. So if you said to people, okay, go ahead, keep your gold, it's illegal to sell it. And if you sell it through legal channels, then you're assessed a very high excise tax on that gold.
That doesn't make much sense right there. He's saying it's going to be illegal to own, but then if you sell it through legal channels, there's going to be an excise tax of like 90%. So again, it's kind of it's contradicting itself. He's saying gold is going to be illegal, but if you sell it through legal channels, you're going to be taxed heavily. So I don't think that it's going to necessarily be illegal then, but maybe if it is legal, if you sell it, then it is going to be taxed heavily. I could kind of understand that, but saying it's going to be illegal and then going to be taxed heavily through legal channels, that does not make sense whatsoever.
Because you're a trader if you have that gold. All right, that's how it would look today. We're in a digital system now, so it's very, very difficult for you to conduct business that's not within that digital system. You could say
this is true in the fact that many of us in the stacking community prefer to do some transactions off the books, meaning not on the online website, so that way there is no digital footprint, there's no history of the transaction. That makes sense. I mean, personally, before I met my local coin shop, the owner at US Coin Trust, Steve, I was doing the majority, if not all of my purchases online, whether it be APMEX, JM Bullion, Provident, Bold Precious Metals, what have you. But until recently, I started doing, just cash payments for my silver and gold with my local coin shop, because then that way there will really not be any kind of tracking on those purchases.
Bitcoin. Okay, but look, in Florida, where I live, a couple of teenagers just ran a Twitter scam, and they got a bunch of Bitcoin from people, and they got caught. And part of the reason they got caught is because they tracked down the Bitcoin, because they were trying to launder the Bitcoin, and they tracked down the Bitcoin. So
So that's interesting. I don't actually own any crypto. I do not plan on owning any crypto. But that is interesting that there is a digital footprint with crypto, and I guess there is a way to track everything. So the government, I guess, can get their hands in on the crypto and how it's kind of facilitated. But that's interesting. So it kind of goes along with the same thing that purchasing silver and gold online, that's leaving like a digital footprint. This is one way that the government can nab you.
Tell you, Bitcoin is not exactly an anonymous currency. All right, gold is an anonymous currency, and at some point it'll be a target for the powers that be, and it's a very logical course that it's on, but much higher prices, David. That doesn't happen at $2,000.
Okay, so two-part question. What is this higher price that they need? And second, what's in it for the government? Why do they need to make this legal and confiscated? They don't need the money. They can just print more money with MMT.
That's a good question. Okay, so E.B. Tucker is saying, okay, once the gold price hits a certain amount, then people are going to start needing to be a little bit fearful that the government is going to do something to take it. This man right here, I don't know his name. I missed it at the beginning of the interview, but this dude, and I like the thin black tie there, by the way, whatever your name is. He's saying, why does the government even need to step in, and at what price is that going to be?
Correct. They can print more money with MMT, and they will print more money with MMT, but this is about control. So as you see the gold price moving higher, it's a vote of confidence against the dollar. And people that control the dollar, that are in power, I mean, I say in the book, the power of the U.S. dollar is the fact that you've got all these nuclear-powered aircraft carrier groups and submarines pointing at people in the world saying, you're going to use the dollar. Well, that doesn't last forever. I mean, in fact, David, nothing in life lasts forever. Everything is constantly changing. And the change right now is putting the dollar's dominant position in jeopardy. And so it's not about money, it's about power. And
all right, so I mean that kind of makes sense too, right? Because we are seeing a major devaluation of the United States dollar. It is weakening with this second bill about to pass about the new stimulus package. We are seeing just nonstop printing of the dollar.
Gold is real money that cannot be. It's unadulterated. It cannot be altered by aircraft carrier groups and submarines,
right,
and people in power. And so the dollar is only as good as the ability of the people that print it to force you to take it. And so gold is the only asset in the whole world that's not someone else's liability. That's a very important feature in a time like this.
Basically saying that gold is real money, right? Not IOUs, that it is real money.
Do you see any correlation between the government's ability or right to confiscate your personal wealth and control your wealth, like you explained, and our loss of civil liberties?
Absolutely. I mean, back at one point, when my grandfather was younger, he told me that they had a $10,000 bill, they had a $1,000 bill, they had a $500 bill. Now you have a $100 bill. I mean, in Las Vegas, $100 is breakfast. I mean, you can forget about it. And then
that's true. I was just there this past November.
if you go get your winnings and it's over a very small amount of money, you fill out copious amounts of tax forms. So the concept of financial freedom is very warped in the U.S. And I think for the system, for the powers that be to hold on, you've got to make sure you have control. And control today, is well in place. It's very difficult to operate outside of the system. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating people operate outside of the system. I'm just saying that over time, the less free a system is, the less opportunity is in that system. A free system is where opportunity lies. But as you contract that freedom, you also contract opportunity. And in the U.S., that it's under pressure. The system, the ability, the meritocracy in the U.S. is changing right now. And people, they give it lip service, but you look at your perception of the U.S. as a land of opportunity, and you look at the reality of the U.S. as a system of draconian laws and thousands of pages of tax legislation and too many government acts to count, and $600 for unemployed people, and extra PPP loans for people to buy Lamborghinis in Miami, and some people get forgiven and some people don't get forgiven. This is what creates bubble crisis, because recessions naturally sorted things out. There's no such thing as a recession where a bad business operator gets a Ferrari because he gets some free money. He has to hustle and work night and day to save his business, and he has to make wise decisions in a capitalist system, but not in a crisis system. All you have to do is get a lawyer and get the lawyer to tell you how to fill out the PPP forms and the PPP LP and the TALF and the CARES HEALS Act. And you do all that stuff. You don't even have to worry about the actual business you're in. It's all about playing the game. But that game is not a capitalist game.
Have you observed a trend of diminishing financial freedoms here in the U.S. in recent times? If you look back at history, how past crises have formed, people have usually in the past been more willing to relinquish their freedoms to the government during periods of extreme crises. Would you say that could be happening today?
So basically talking about, you think back to 9/11, with the Patriot Act, and just any sort of major crisis that United States citizens will kind of relinquish some of their liberties so that way they could, I guess, be a little bit more safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Buried in all these things is a new this, a new that order. I have a very complicated tax situation, and I've got a firm that helps me with this, and I get these messages from the firm to inform me about this new code and this new thing. The tax return ends up being 400 pages long, and there's no possible way that any person with a high level of intelligence can keep up with this. So 400-page tax return, is totally insane. And let me tell you something. It's going to be 600 pages soon. It's not going to be 4 pages. That would be a free and easy society. This is not the way we're going. I mean, buried in all this stuff is very complicated measures, and it always comes like this. I mean, remember the Patriot Act?
That's what I was just talking about.
Patriot sounds like something that's good. You're patriotic duty, all these things you're taught in civics class. But the Patriot Act made it almost impossible for me to have Canadian brokerage accounts. Almost impossible. I mean, you can do it.
Just because of overseas funding due to terrorism.
But the cost and the paperwork and I have several of them. It's unbelievable the things you have to go through. You're basically proving you're not a terrorist so that you can have stock in a Canadian brokerage account, and participate in financings. I mean, that's not free and easy. That's really expensive, not easy, cumbersome, complicated, and most people, frankly, don't do it. Now, I'm not saying it's all bad. I mean, the Patriot Act. I mean, look. I mean, what? This is the trend is the trend. Okay, David. The secret to life. Okay, to being successful in the business that we're in is to letting go of your preference that things be a certain way and going with the flow. You don't stamp around and pout and have an ideological argument against what's happening. You let go and you go with it. It doesn't mean that you like it, but you go with it and you use your perception to see what's happening, and then you position accordingly. That's what we're doing with gold right now. We don't have hardcore determined beliefs about gold. We understand gold. We know the business. We've been in it for a long time. We know how to make money in the investing markets.
All right. So, do I think that there's going to be a gold confiscation? I do not. I don't think that there is going to be a confiscation like we saw back in 1933. I think that, if anything, maybe the government would put some more tax burden on people when it comes to the selling of the precious metals, whether it be an increase in capital gains tax or introduce a different type of tax on precious metals specifically. But I do not think that they are going to make gold illegal. I just do not see that happening. Is anything possible? Yes, but I just don't think that is very likely. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think there's going to be a gold confiscation act like we saw in 1933? Or do you think that is just paranoia? Let us all know. And I just want to quickly thank these elite channel supporters, and if you haven't become a channel member, please check out the awesome perks and join today. With that, I'm the Stacking Stormtrooper. Check out these videos. Until next time, long live the Empire.